Okay, I'm working on a 2006 F350. It's a dump truck, but that shouldn't matter too much other than it's a heavy truck. And the customer brought it to me for a lack of power. Either he has been putting a lot of parts on it or an independent shop has. It's got a new turbo EGR valve, exhaust back pressure sensor, a map sensor, that's the boost sensor. It's got a new sensor there. It also has a new hose, has new charge air cooler hoses, and a new ICP sensor. So somebody's been all over it and it's lacking power. Oh yeah, and it also has new fuel filters. So now I'm going to tell you what I monitor and why, and what we and also what I'm going to find out with this one. Well, what I think I'm going to find out with it when I start to test it. So the only time we can look at and see ICP, the injection control pressure sensor, to see if it's failed, is at key on, engine off. And this one right now looks pretty good. We're reading right there a quarter of a volt, 3 psi, so that's normal. The other things we want to look at, is it overheating? Because if it is running hot, it'll give us it can cause it to lack power. So no, it's not running hot. We're monitoring that. Monitoring ICP, key on, engine off, the voltage and the actual pressure, IPR when I'm going down the road. The importance of that is if it ever hits 85%, then it's compensating for something, a leak, a weak pump, something going on there. So I'm going to monitor IPR, but the tricky one here is the mass airflow voltage. If you just think of mass airflow should mirror throttle position, and that's anywhere from 1 volt running, roughly 1 volt, to 5 volts, the voltage reference under full throttle. Normally on these I'll see about anywhere from 1 to 4 volts. So here we have the mass airflow, key on, engine off, the actual boost that it's getting, and of course the sticking turbo. We never want to see the turbo hit 85%, so or 15%. Then it's compensating because it's either boosting too high or too low. So we monitor the duty cycle and make sure it's not hitting 15 or 85%. And then of course what I always try to stress is we have to be checking fuel pressure under a load, not in the stall revving it up, because that does not count. So I have my fuel pressure gauge mounted here, and I'll check it under a load. So I'll go ahead and cycle the key, start it up. I do have 55 psi, which is pretty good. I don't worry about it until it starts to drop under 40. And just for the record, the fuel pressure is good. So now we go back and we start to monitor all the different stuff here: ICP, IPR, mass airflow, the amount of boost it gets, and see if the turbo's sticking. So I'm going to hold this as steady as I can and drive it under a load. Remember, mass airflow has to mirror throttle position. Going to the floor, no turbo sticking. It's falling on its face. My boost isn't there, and my mass airflow isn't hitting the floor. So that's what I'm worried about. So I have the poor boost, the lack of power, and everything else seems to be in specs. I'm not overheating, my fuel pressure is good, my turbo's not sticking. So this one is a puzzler, except for if you just remember, mass airflow has to mirror throttle position. And also think of it as we can't get air in if we can't get air out. So I suspect a stick restriction in the exhaust, just because of the mass airflow. So it's back in power pretty good. Okay, here we go, another hard accel. Holding to the floor. I'm not getting the boost, I can feel it. And my fuel pressure, it's good. So I'm going to go after trying to see if I got a restriction in the exhaust. inside the exhaust. I don't know how clear that is to you, but that's like the honeycomb part that's inside the catalytic converter is actually sideways. So there's our restriction and our lack of power. So let's get this taken care of and do a retest here. Okay, here we are with the exhaust disconnected. It's a little bit better, but I definitely found the problem with the exhaust. I'm going to replace the converter and recheck it. Okay, I'll try to hold it as steady as I can on hard Excel here. But I have the new converter put on there, and now I'm monitoring the mass airflow. I have the accelerator position number 3, which should mirror it, but it's hard to get all 3 in the same picture. So I'm going to go ahead and just monitor the mass airflow now and the actual boost that I'm getting. And again, we want to see usually about like this, 1 volt at an idle, and going down the road. It can go up to 5 volts, but normally I barely see 4 volts. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the hard Excel and see the difference. Okay, I didn't feel the lack of power. Again, sorry for the shaking. Okay, another thing I want to cover, especially like this truck, somebody's been all over it and it's hard to tell. I mean, we have the new charge air cooler hoses on both ends. We have a rebuilt turbo on there. We can have a wiring repair to the VGT solenoid, new hose to the map. And so we have a lot going on here. One of the things I have not mentioned in another area to look for, because I don't know the history of this truck, is if the other turbo broke. Sometimes we have problems with these turbos with a shaft breaking inside, and you get part of the wheel go inside the exhaust and cause a restriction. And so that way, you know, let's say you open your catalytic converter up, there's nothing wrong there, but it's still acting just like you have a restricted exhaust. It is possible that part of that turbo is still inside the exhaust, and you can't see it. Normally it makes it past the first bend down here, and it's not anywhere where you're going to see it because it's too far down. So the best way to check that is to undo your exhaust here off the turbo, undo it down off the bottom off the catalytic converter, and roll a golf ball down it. If the golf ball travels all the way through, then it's probably not restricted. If the golf ball doesn't make it, then you have to take that exhaust piece off, get your golf ball back out, and find out why it didn't make it all the way through. But that should cover it pretty much, what's going on with this one and what I found, and it's a pretty weird one, so I thought it was a good one to make a video. Thank you.